At this place in history, we're in Barrie. We're at the Vermont History Center. I'm with Executive Director of the Vermont Historical Society, Steve Perkins. Steve, what brings us to Barrie today?
So we're going to go up to our library and we're going to learn about Flora Coutts, an amazing Vermont educator who worked with Vermont kids, but also children in Korea and North Korea. So Paul Carnahan, our librarian, is upstairs and he's going to tell us more. Shall we head up?
Let's do it.
Hey, Steve. Amanda?
Hi. So there's a lot here, but I guess we should probably get some background first before we dive into what's on the table in front of us. So what can you tell us about her biographically?
Well, what we know about her is that she was born in Charleston, Vermont. Her father was a stone cutter in the quarries in Hardwick and died young. Her mother was left with 8 children, I think, that she brought up, and most of those went on in higher education, to get a higher education, including Flora, who went to Johnson State College, and then went on to lead an amazing life. The first thing she did was to travel to Korea to teach school in Pyongyang, with a Presbyterian church school called the Pyongyang Foreign School. This was in the 1920s. You know, it must have been an incredible experience for a young woman from Hardwick to find herself in Korea in the 1920s. Just a real eye-opening experience, I imagine. When she got back from Korea, she ran for the state Senate. Served 2 terms in the Senate in the late 1930s, time when George Aiken was governor. She was not the first woman to serve in the Senate. There had been at least one woman before her. But when she was there in 1939, she was the only woman in the Senate at that point. Then World War II broke out and she went back to Asia, this time with the Red Cross. And this time going to China and India and Burma. When she came back, she took another career and became head of the Northeast Vermont Development Corporation, trying to bring economic development to the Northeast Kingdom of Vermont. And she was involved in all sorts of efforts along those lines, including the development of Burke Mountain and Jay Peak. And then she went back to the legislature again for 6 terms in the 1960s and 70s. So she was there in the 30s and then in the late 60s. I mean, if you can imagine the amount of change that happened in Vermont between the 30s and the 60s, it must have been a real quite an experience for her, and probably for her fellow legislators, having someone who's had this much world experience, yet was so rooted in Vermont and you know, the real hardcore areas of Vermont where she was living and working and had grown up.
At this place in history,